Most Americans will never visit the Strait of Hormuz, but many of them will still pay for what happens there. A threat near that waterway does not stay in the Middle East. It moves through shipping risk, insurance costs, oil markets, refineries, fuel distribution. Then, a few days later, it shows up on a gas station sign in Phoenix, at a truck stop in Texas, or in the price of a flight out of Chicago. That is the oil business, and that is the real point of this story. Your gas bill is where geopolitics becomes personal. A lot of people think oil-rich countries are rich for one simple reason: they sell oil. That is true, but it is not the whole story. The real money comes from a powerful combination. The world still depends on oil. Some countries can produce it much more cheaply than others, and fear can push the market price higher, even before a real shortage begins. If the world needs your product every day and your costs are low, and every geopolitical scare makes that product more valuable, you are not just in a normal business, you are in a power business. People love to talk about the energy transition, and over the long run, that transition matters. But right now, the American economy still runs through oil at almost every level. Not just pickup trucks, not just sport utility vehicles, delivery vans, jet fuel, long-haul trucking, farm equipment, construction machinery, container shipping, plastics, chemicals, industrial materials. Even if you drive an electric vehicle, the world around you still runs through systems built on oil. The package on your porch, the produce arriving at a Walmart distribution center, the asphalt on the highway, the plane ticket for a family vacation, the diesel cost behind almost every product in a store. Oil producers are not selling a luxury. They are selling a necessity into a market that still cannot replace it quickly, and that changes everything. When you sell something the world needs every single day, the question is not, can you sell the barrel? The real question is, how cheaply can you get it out of the ground? That is where the game turns brutally unequal. Not all oil is equally hard to produce. Some barrels come from offshore platforms that cost billions of dollars to build and maintain. Some come from shale fields that need constant drilling. Some come from remote places with harsh weather and expensive infrastructure. And some come from giant conventional fields where the geology is far more forgiving. That is where producers like Saudi Arabia have a structural advantage. When the fields are massive, when the underground pressure is favorable, and when the infrastructure already exists at scale, the cost of producing a barrel can be far lower than in tougher regions. That does not mean the work is easy. It means the economics begin in a much better place. And in oil, that difference is everything. Because the market does not pay you based on your cost, it pays the market price. So if your cost is low and the world price is high, the spread becomes enormous. That spread is where oil wealth starts to look less like ordinary business income and more like strategic power. It helps explain sovereign wealth funds, huge development projects, global sports deals, real estate, political influence. They are not just selling volume, they are capturing margin at scale. And sometimes, the barrel becomes more valuable even when the barrel itself has not changed. That is where fear enters the story. This is the part American households feel fastest. Oil is not priced only by what exists underground. It is also priced by what traders, governments, insurers, and refiners think might happen above ground. A tanker attack, a missile launch, a threat to a shipping lane, a military escalation near a choke point, an insurance spike, a credible rumor before the market fully opens. That is how fear gets into the price. And when that fear is tied to a place like the Strait of Hormuz, the reaction can be fast. Markets do not wait for a full supply collapse. They start pricing in the risk of disruption almost immediately. That is the fear premium. Most Americans will never hear that phrase at the pump, but they will feel it. They feel it when the commute gets more expensive, when a summer road trip costs more than expected, when airlines raise fares, when trucking costs rise, when retailers pass those costs through the system, when inflation becomes harder to bring down because energy keeps pushing from underneath. That is why oil is not an abstract geopolitical story. It is a household story. It is the parent in Arizona watching the total climb before school drop-off. It is the trucker outside Dallas running the numbers on a long route. It is the family in Ohio wondering why groceries, delivery, and travel all seem to get hit at once. That is what oil does. It turns distant instability into personal expense. And if you are a low-cost producer, every spike in fear can make your barrel more profitable without changing the barrel at all. Same field, same oil, different headline, higher margin. Russia made that lesson impossible to ignore. The West tried to squeeze Russian oil revenue with sanctions, financial pressure, shipping restrictions, and insurance limits. In theory, that should have hit hard. In practice, it did hit, but it did not make the oil disappear. Instead, the market adapted. Barrels were rerouted, discounts appeared, middlemen got busier, and refiners in Asia found opportunity in crude that many Western buyers no longer wanted. That is the part that matters. The sanctions changed the route, they changed the price, they changed the buyer list, but they did not erase the underlying reality. The world still needed the oil, so the oil kept moving, just under different terms. Russia earned less per barrel than it wanted, but often more than leaving the barrel unsold. Buyers got cheaper crude, refiners with the right access improved their economics, and the market proved once again that oil is flexible, resilient, and morally unsentimental. If demand is strong enough, the system usually finds a way. And when the system finds a way, the money may change direction, but it rarely disappears. Now we get to the part many people still underestimate. The barrel does not stop making money when it leaves the ground. Crude oil in the ground is potential. Gasoline in your tank is the cash register. Refining turns a raw barrel into the products people actually buy. Gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, petrochemicals, industrial inputs, asphalt, and more. That matters because the world does not consume crude in its raw form. It consumes what crude becomes. The American driver buys gasoline, the airline buys jet fuel, the freight system buys diesel, manufacturers buy chemical feedstocks, road crews buy asphalt. So if a country or a company can produce crude cheaply, process it efficiently, and sell the finished products into a tight market, it captures much more of the value chain. That is where the machine really shows itself. The barrel gets paid on the way out of the ground, then it gets paid again after refining, then it gets paid again through the products households and businesses actually use. That is why oil wealth can scale so dramatically. It is not just extraction, it is extraction plus processing, plus trade, plus timing. So why do some oil-producing countries make so much money? Not just because they sell oil. They make so much money because the world still depends on oil. Because some of them can produce it very cheaply. Because fear can lift the price before any real shortage appears. And because the barrel can be monetized again and again across the value chain. That is the whole system. Dependence, cheap production, fear premium, refining, downstream value. And all of it leads back to the same place. Your gas bill is where geopolitics becomes personal. That is why a threat near a distant waterway can raise the cost of driving to work in America. Why a sanction in one part of the world can create opportunity in another. Why a cheap barrel in the ground can become expensive by the time it reaches a family budget. Oil is not just energy. It is leverage over movement, prices, and time. And until the world can move people, goods, and industry without leaning so heavily on oil, countries with cheap barrels, strategic position, and strong refining capacity will keep turning global tension into revenue. And American households will keep meeting geopolitics at the pump.